And cover this versus battle, right? Like, there's a reason why Ariel, who in part one we discussed as being connected to the Septuagint, so why Ariel and Ursula are in this epic versus battle to begin with. So we'll talk about that and why Ariel was a sure win. Okay, we knew to put our money on Ariel at the beginning of this. Okay, but nonetheless, honey, there is tea to be told in this joint. Okay, first of all, Ursula in this movie, of course, is the evil sea witch and diabolical at that, right? Like, she's dark and she's menacing, but she also has this motherly quality to her as well. You can tell from her color, right? She's just void of light. So she just looks like she's been in the deepest part of the seas for a bit. The other part of her plight is that she wants to have control of the Sea Kingdom. So she's basically using Ariel's desires against her to manipulate her way into control of the kingdom. But she's very powerful, right? So they made her a very powerful being, almost like a high priestess or like a deity of some sort. She has the power to grant people their desires. She's like the Shadow Man a little bit, right? Like Disney has these characters that are really dark and mystical and can give you what you want. So yeah, she can give you what you want, but it's always with the caveat that you got to give up something, okay? And in predatory lending fashion, this loan shark basically makes the rawest deal with Ariel, and Ariel has to give up her voice in order to walk amongst men, okay? We know that leads to this epic fight. Ursula continues to sabotage, eventually rises in power, okay, against King Triton, but Ariel, with the help of some sea friends and the land friends as well, she's able to defeat Ursula, okay? Give her father his kingdom back. And then Arya goes on to live happily ever after. But I want to talk about why Ursula, this powerful yet menacing yet plotting sea witch, is here to begin with. Because there's a reason why the storytellers definitely picked her and this character to play the antagonist. Ursula, her name means she-bear. So Ursula means she-bear. Now, the she-bear constellation is Ursa Major, right? So there's the connection there. So this would be the constellation that inspires the character Ursula. And once we get into the mythology of Ursa Major, I think we're going to understand a bit more about why Ursula was so mean. But that's going to come up here in a moment. I want to talk about the astronomy first, okay? Now, the astronomy of Ursa Major, she is a circumpolar star. So she basically just sits north, right? And because she sits north in the sky's horizon, we can see her every night. It's also important to note that because this constellation is circumpolar, it never falls below the horizon. So it's always above the horizon, meaning that we can see it every night. Where most of the constellations actually fall below the horizon. Like we may see Pegasus at a certain part of the year, or Sagittarius, so these constellations do come and go, but the good old Ursa Major is always there above us, arcing over us. But I think there's also a direct correlation to her power. Well, for instance, we typically pray up to some power, right? Can you please give me this guy? Can I please have this in the name of your favorite deity, right? So she has the same energy because by way of the people who created the story, this is what arcs above you, right? And your prayers tend to go up. So they use this character to inspire Ursula. Now, let's go into the actual mythology of Ursa Major. Now, before Ursa Major was known as Ursa Major, the she-bear, she was known as Callisto, and Callisto was very beautiful, and she caught the eye of Zeus, aka Jupiter. All right, now Jupiter, or Zeus, the god of experience, okay, wanted to truly experience all that life had to offer, so he advanced on Callisto, although I don't think she was really feeling it at the time. He had a crazy wife, but nonetheless their courtship happened, and their situation led to a child being born named Arcus. Okay, so that same energy of arcing over us, right? Arcus. Nonetheless, the birth of the baby drove Zeus's wife Hera mad, so she, for the betrayal that happened to her, decides that she's going to turn Callisto into a bear. And once she does this, Callisto begs Zeus, who's very powerful, to turn her back to her original form. But he refuses, and thus Callisto has to run off into the wilderness. Sad, right? But it gets worse, okay? Arcus grows up, and he runs across the bear in the wilderness, which is his mother. And not realizing it, he decides that he wants to, destroy the bear like a young guy would, who can, is a hunter, right? So yeah, it's about to go down. But however, Zeus decides at this time that he would intervene, and in order to save the mother and the son, he decided to turn them both into the constellations, Ursa Major, of course, and also Ursa Minor, or Bootes, depending on the mythology that you check out. But yeah, this is how the constellation birth story came to be. Now, this is the Greek story, of course, but the siren culture that was birthed by way of Ariel's voice is definitely Greek. So we're going to keep it towards the Greek mythology, and we can, of course, see the name correlation here as well, right? So, quick mentionings. Other cultures have also named, personified this particular group of stars because of its position never falling below the horizon. But we're going to keep it Greek because the Greeks definitely had a lot of influence when it came to mermaid siren culture. One other thing to note is that Hera, she often mocks Callisto because the constellation never falls below the horizon, thus she never gets any rest like the other constellations. However, it doesn't seem that this bothers Callisto, and that she's very happy to at least be united back with her son. Now let's talk about this too. Why would she be considered the she-bear? I mean, the constellation doesn't per se give you like a bear. In fact, it looks like a cup. We also call it the Big Dipper. But they formed the bear, or they basically gave it the bear nature, right? Because bears represent a few things. They're very protective. And this is what we see with Ursula, right? She could care less about the poor unfortunate souls that she's got to make these bad deals with. But when it comes to her own offspring, she is protective, okay? She don't want the slightest of the slights to happen to them. So she's very protective, like a mama bear would be to her cub. But there's also the anthropomorphized concepts that are resting with the people that we're hearing about in the story. Okay, so let's break that down. Zeus would be Jupiter, and Jupiter is the planet of experience, expansion, and wisdom. Okay, it's also correlated with the number 9. 9 is the last and the completion of a set, right? So 27, 28, 29, right? We know we've completed it. And that's what experience kind of feels like, right? You do all the planning for a trip just to experience it, okay? So he represents the god of experience. Now, the god of experience is coming together with Callisto, or Ursa Major, right? And Ursa Major is what arcs over us every night, okay? So the thing about every experience that we see and that we create for ourselves in the daytime, right? When we're active, when we're participating in working, okay? That's what we do in the first half of our 24 hours, right? We're active, we're working, we're putting everything together. Once the nighttime comes, though, we get the opportunity to reflect, send our well wishes, our hopes and intents for how we want our next days to go, right? But no matter what, right? What we're also doing is we're bearing witness to what we did earlier in the daytime, okay? So by Callisto and Zeus coming together, all right, they bared witness to their union, and they also bore a child, okay? So this story of Hera turning her into the bear is actually just a reference of how every night we bear witness to what has happened in our days, okay, or in the day before, okay? So, or if you think about it from a future tense, right, you got to be willing to bear whatever comes up next, okay? A little bit further, of course, we know that Zeus is begged by Callisto to turn her back into her original form, right? She doesn't want to be a bear. She's beautiful, okay? And who would, right? And you think too that because Zeus has this wife who just turned her into the bear, he might not want to piss off Hera, okay? But also, like, you got this pretty young thing. Why wouldn't you want to have your pretty young thing back, okay? Well, Zeus is representing our experiences, okay? And by coming together with Callisto, who is the bear, okay? And you have to be willing to bear and bear witness to things, right? The thing about that is, with experience, you don't get the opportunity to take it back. You can't roll back an experience to its starting point, right? Once you tasted sushi, you know what it's like. And I remember this one time, I love sushi rolls, right? Sushi's one of my favorites, right? If I could undo it, I would have. I ordered this box instead of the rolls with my homeboy. So we both got it thinking that we were like, oh yeah, we love the sushi rolls. Yeah, let's just go ahead and try the box. And it was like literally the Sea Kingdom on the plates. And they have the nigiri, they have like, the pieces of salmon. They said it was smoked, it looked raw. And they just had this stuff. And we were like, oh, what did we get ourselves into? So there's not much that's really appealing to me on this plate. But I'm like, you know what? It's the experience. And I've got to bear it, okay? Because I just paid $30 for this sushi. So I decide that I'm going to try the caviar because I'm like, okay, well, this caviar should be good. It's like a little piece of sushi with the caviar. Rich people eat it. So I'm thinking this should be, okay, try caviar. And I hated it. I really did. I mean, the little fish eggs went everywhere in my mouth. Like the crevices it went to, it was just like, never again. Never again. Horrible experience, right? Now, because it was so bad, if I could, I would undo that experience from my mind forever, right? But I can't. It was something that I went through, okay? So you can't go back and untoast the toast or, undo the sushi experience, right? It's just something that you had to bear with, right? You had to bear it, okay? So yeah, you don't get to undo it. And I think that's what the point of the story also is subliminally, right? When you go through something that you've created, that you've acted upon, you just can't redo it. You have to be willing to bear it. Okay. Now we see the rotation of the sun cycle. Half of the time it's daylight, half of the time it's nighttime. And we see this cycle every day of our lives, right? So whatever you're experiencing, you better hope for sure that you can bear it. And this is what Ursa Major reminds us, that you got to be able to bear those things that you are engaging yourself into, okay? All right, guys, so now we will discuss Ursula's plight and why she wanted to take over rulership of the Sea Kingdom from her brother. Well, when we think about being above the horizon, so she's always above the horizon, never falls below the horizon. Our horizon is everything basically in the sky. And then when it falls below the horizon, it's basically falling below the sea level, meaning that we can't see it anymore. Okay. And there's this play on the word sea level that is so tricky and funny to me. It takes me out. But we see SEE, of course. And one of the levels that we use with our sight or seeing is the sea level, the SEA level, right? Like a city like New Orleans is below sea level. But a city like maybe Denver may be above sea level because it's closer towards the mountains, right? Or especially if you're in a mountain, right? You're way above the sea level, okay? So there's this connection and correlation, a correspondence with these words. How you see SEE and the sea, the SEA, right? Because the sea is so deep. It's just a level that you can't see. But so this is what I can see, right? So this would be my SEE levels. Also, when you think about seas, when you take just the corner of like let's say where your eyebrow ends, right? And you trace that spot of your socket from the top to the bottom, you've drawn out a C. Okay, if you do it on both sides, you got two C's, okay? So you see SEE, the CSEA levels through your eyes, which are C's. Okay, so it's a lot in part about how you see. And the thing about Ursa Major is she's above the sea level, so she never falls below the horizon to be in dominion or in control of what we see. She's only bearing witness to what we have to bear later on, right? She is very much, by way of the character of Ursula, envious of Triton because he gets to have dominion of the seas, okay? Even Hera, by way of the Greek mythology, made fun of Callisto because she wasn't able to fall below the sea level, okay? So she didn't have the same vantage point that we did. On the flip side of that, though, right, it also is what makes her very powerful. So basically, Ariel is able to have these experiences, right? Have the opportunity to walk on land. But Ursula doesn't have the opportunity to have these experiences because Ursa Major, of course, sits north and we can always see her. So these are just points that the ancients, the Greeks in particular, are pointing out, and then other writers just write about these stories and kind of pull these premises together. Okay, so again, we saw a princess get married, live happily ever after, and then the bad guy, Ursa Major, she went down. So I want to know why. I was like, why are they making Ursa Major so bad, or Ursula Major? Why she gotta be so evil? Okay. Well, of course, if you have the kind of backstory that Callisto did, that would make anybody a little bitter. Also, to kind of humanize her, right? Because this is not a human, the stars aren't human, right? But if you were going to give it human qualities, it's like, well, why can't I go down there? Why can't I see what they're seeing? I want to do this, right? I gotta just stay up here all the time, right? And she has to, because of her position, of course, by way of the constellations. But if you're going to make her human, that would be a fun thing to kind of play off, right? Oh yeah, you can't come down here, so you're a jelly, right? So they made Ursula very jealous of her brother King Triton, who also is the son of Poseidon, who rules the sea kingdom, right? The sea, okay? Poseidon, who would be Triton's father, king of the seas. Poseidon is also known as Zeus's brother, okay? So the bros are siblings. And when you think about just the astrology by way of the concepts, both Jupiter or Zeus rule the 12th house alongside with Poseidon, which would be Neptune, okay? So the seas are coming together with our experience, right? Because our experience has to do, a lot of our experience has to do with what we see or what we saw it as, right? When we think of 12th house energy, because this would be like the closeout where things are being unveiled and revealed to us, right? So now we have a certain way of seeing things because we went basically through all of the steps of the process from the first house up until the 12th house, and then we can start over a new cycle again, of course, right? But a lot of that has to do with our experiences and the wisdom that we saw in it, okay? So for me, I learned that day when I ordered their sushi box that this wasn't it, okay? I got wise. I stuck to the sushi rolls, okay? I have those experiences with me, and this is the wisdom that I've gained, okay? Now let's go ahead and get into this versus battle real quick, and I think we should be ending, y'all, okay? Because it's a lot. I know it's a lot. I know I'm saying a lot of concepts. I hope everybody's following me, okay? It is a lot. I really wanted to treat her with justice because Ursula deserves this, Ursa Major, right? Because we, like I said, we're seeing this every night. But let's go ahead and go into the verses, all right? So why would Ursula, again, Ursa Major, who is the bear, the great she-bear, why would she even be in a versus battle with Ariel? Now, again, we talked about Ariel. Her name means altar, okay? She's also getting married to Prince Eric, or the air, or projecting of things, right? How you air it out, right? So she is getting married or wedded or wetting, because we're talking mermaids, right? Weddings, to, at the altar, which is her name, she's getting married to Eric. Now, her name also means Septuagint, okay? Now, this is the big one. This was the translation of the Hebrew Bible into Greek, okay? So, Ariel is now being aired or projected on by way of this marriage, okay? So, this marriage got to happen. And the only thing that's stopping it is the sabotatory ways of Ursula or Ursa Major, okay? So basically, she gets like 3 days or 3 nights to basically have this experience and bring her dream into fruition. And what's opposing her is what she has to bear, okay? Right? What Ariel has to bear. And the deal that she made was to give up her voice in order to walk amongst men, right? So there's a little subliminal with that. What I'm kind of taking away from that is when you think about giving up your voice to walk amongst men mentalities, when I think of Christianity, the faith, because we're talking about the Christian faith, a lot of times you give up your voice to be a part of a greater calling, right? So if you're going to bear witness to being a Christian, you have to give up questioning, having to give up your voice, okay? The other part of this too is Ursula, just by way of her being the she-bear, you have to bear witness, right? And they want, the storytellers at least, wanted people to bear witness to this marriage, okay? So they gotta defeat Ursula, right? Because they want people to bear witness to, in their terms, the new Son of God, which is the name Jesus, okay? So they had to win. But now let me just keep it funky. The people who have profited from a lot of religion, there were wars fought around religion. There was ideology. There was land that was taken. In God we trust, or God gave us the land. There's always been this conversations about how not just religious practice played in religion, but also commerce, also land, also morality, laws, all those things, right? So when you talk about a religious book going up against a pagan, astronomy point, that's a lot. A versus battle against Pegasus. It's not a versus battle against Draco, right? This is a versus battle against Ursa Major, right? The she bear, because it was important for the Greeks to have people bear witness to this marriage, which is now the projecting of their image of the Son of God. And I think that's for a lot of different reasons. I think just like the book of Eli, like I mentioned before, people who are in control of these things feel like they can run the world. It goes bigger than just running your street or your block, or maybe even a city-state, right? Maybe you can get far. Maybe you can, run the locals, right? But to run a world, that takes a world-related concept. And where we can all meet and agree is the fact that we're having a spiritual experience, right? So whether you tie religion to it or just call it spirituality or whatever, right? That's the one true thing that we can all say, I got breath in my body, you got breath in yours, and this is how this thing is working right now. Because once that stops, that's it, right? And then we go on to wherever we go on to. But concepts like this, religion, spiritual, this is a grand concept. This is something that all of humanity participates in. So if they can run this, okay, they can run the world's nations and many nations for many years, thousands of years, quite possibly, when you think about it, okay? So there was an absolute reason why it had to be Ursa Major, because because the Greeks had to win over what we bear witness to, okay? And we all saw that movie. We all saw that wedding. We all were cheering for the cute black Disney mermaid princess, okay? It was a moment, right? But it was also a very subliminal moment, okay? And there's a lot to be said about how much subliminal stuff they put into this movie, okay? So I think that's it, y'all. I have covered all the spiritual connections that I could make, all the subliminal connections. And I'll just give us like one big grand takeaway, okay? So that this doesn't get too lost in the sauce of what they wanted to say with their hidden meaning in The Little Mermaid. We've all got 24 hours in a day, right? And half of that time is going to be spent creating that life. The other half of that is going to be reflecting on the life that you're creating, right? That's the duality of it. And just know, by way of what these concepts are saying, especially when it comes to Zeus or, Jupiter, or just experience and bearing witness to it, whatever you experience or whatever you create for yourself, you got to be able to bear it. You got to be able to bear with it, bear through it, be protective of it, right? If it's something that you're trying to bear, right? You got to do so many things when it comes to those things that we actively participate in. But knowing that, right, whatever is created, it's done, okay? And it's going to be a part of you. You'll continue to go on and bear witness to it. I'm always reminded that I want to be bearing, of course, good fruit, okay? And of course, I planted some trees out there that were not always rooted in the best of intention, right? But I got the opportunity to see this world again and decide where I wanted to go next, where I wanted to take my bearings, right? Gather my bearings, right? All these things about bears, because a lot of life has to do with how we bear ourselves, right? Bare naked, okay? How we come, how we are seen, how we, stand in ourselves, and or kind of like above ourselves, right? Because I would say it like this too. It's like when you're working in the daytime, right? You're working, but it's about the nighttime, right? Of being above it, and then bearing a witness to how this didn't work, or how so-and-so got in your nerves, or how the copier keeps doing this weird thing, and every time you say something about it, nothing ever happens, right? So it's like that. It's like you have to experience life, but then you also get the beautiful Callisto, you get the beautiful experience of bearing witness to it as well, right? So with the things that we bear, okay, with the things that we bear, just know it could be a lifetime sentence, because we've got a lifetime to do this. So just be careful of that too, because I know that there's a lot of people who probably did something yesterday that they wish they could take back, and we all make mistakes. Like I said, the caviar was definitely a mistake, right? But I'm talking like, hurting somebody, taking somebody's life, making choices for them that you don't have a right to. So, you got to be careful with that. Because you have to bear that. You have to bear those consequences for it. But that's life. And if you're not careful, you could be making a life for yourself that's hard to bear. And like I said, I just hope that it translates pretty well, y'all. But I am so happy to close this out. So this is it. This is where I'm going to close it out. Thank you guys for taking the time to listen, to be a part of this. I enjoy doing this content. And of course, let me know your thoughts. Let me know if it flowed too, honey, because I know we covered a lot. But I'll see you guys in the comment section and it's the next video. Until then, I love you guys. Y'all take care. This is Valgamy and I am out.